There is a city in America where the dead are buried above the ground, where jazz was born in the streets, where voodoo priests once ruled the night, where a hurricane tried to erase everything and failed. This is New Orleans, and its story is unlike anything you have ever heard. Long before any European ever set foot here, this land belonged to the Chitimacha people. For thousands of years, they lived along the Mississippi River, fishing, trading, surviving in a swampy, dangerous, and beautiful land. Then in 1682, a French explorer named René Robert Cavelier, known as La Salle, sailed down the Mississippi River and claimed this entire region for France. He called it Louisiana, named after King Louis XIV of France. But no one actually built a city here yet. The land was swamp. It flooded constantly. Mosquitoes carried deadly diseases. Rational people would have walked away. The French did not walk away. In 1718, a French-Canadian soldier named Jean-Baptiste Le Moyne de Bienville looked at this impossible swampland and said, "We build here." Everyone thought he was crazy, and maybe he was. But New Orleans was founded, built on land that sat below sea level, surrounded by water on almost every side. Workers died by the hundreds from yellow fever and malaria. The ground was so soft that when people were buried underground, the coffins floated back up. That is why, to this day, New Orleans buries its dead above the ground, in tombs, like small white cities of the dead called cities of the dead. For decades, France controlled New Orleans. But in 1762, France secretly handed Louisiana over to Spain. The people of New Orleans were furious. They had not been asked. They rebelled. Spain crushed the rebellion and executed the leaders. But something unexpected happened under Spanish rule. New Orleans grew. Architecture changed. Those famous iron balconies you see today, those came from the Spanish period. And during all of this, thousands of enslaved Africans were being brought here against their will. They built this city with their hands. They cooked its food. They played its music. They shaped everything that makes New Orleans, New Orleans. In 1800, Napoleon Bonaparte of France took Louisiana back from Spain. He had big dreams, a French empire in America. Those dreams died fast. A massive slave revolt in Haiti destroyed his plans. His army collapsed from disease. Napoleon needed money for his European wars. So in 1803, he sold the entire Louisiana territory, over 800,000 square miles, to the United States, for just $15 million. President Thomas Jefferson could not believe his luck. America doubled in size overnight, and New Orleans, the most important port on the continent, became American. Now here is where the story gets darker and stranger. In the early 1800s, enslaved Africans brought their spiritual traditions with them from West Africa and Haiti. These traditions mixed with French Catholicism and created something entirely new, Louisiana voodoo. And no one embodied this more than Marie Laveau. She was a free black woman, a hairdresser, and the most powerful and feared person in New Orleans. White or black, rich or poor. She knew everyone's secrets. Politicians came to her. Judges came to her. People whispered her name. She is buried in New Orleans to this day, and people still leave offerings at her tomb. When the Civil War began in 1861, New Orleans was the largest and wealthiest city in the entire South. It was also one of the most complicated, with a large population of free black citizens, mixed-race Creoles, and enslaved people all living in the same city. In 1862, Union forces captured New Orleans, and it became one of the first major Southern cities under Union control during the war. After the war ended, black citizens of New Orleans briefly held real political power. They voted. They held office. They built schools. Then came brutal crackdowns, Jim Crow laws, segregation. The progress was crushed, but the culture survived. At the turn of the 20th century, something happened in the streets of New Orleans that would change the entire world. Jazz was born here. In the brothels and bars of a neighborhood called Storyville, black musicians began mixing African rhythms, blues, and European harmonies into something no one had ever heard before. A man named Buddy Bolden is often called the first jazz musician. Then came Louis Armstrong, born in New Orleans in 1901, in a neighborhood so poor it was called the battlefield. He would go on to become one of the most famous musicians in human history. The music that came out of New Orleans did not stay in New Orleans. It spread to Chicago, New York, Paris, Tokyo, and everywhere else on Earth. Every year, New Orleans throws the biggest party in America. Mardi Gras, French for Fat Tuesday, traces its roots back to French Catholic traditions brought to Louisiana in the 1700s. It is the last day before Lent, a Christian period of fasting. So people eat, drink, and celebrate like there is no tomorrow. By the 1800s, Mardi Gras in New Orleans had become legendary. Secret societies called crews built elaborate floats. People wore masks. Beads were thrown from balconies. Today, over 1 million people flood into New Orleans every year for Mardi Gras. It pumps nearly $1 billion into the city's economy. On August 29, 2005, the worst disaster in modern American city history hit New Orleans. Hurricane Katrina made landfall as a massive Category 3 storm. The levees, the walls built to hold back the water, failed. Catastrophically, 80% of the city flooded. Over 1,800 people died. Entire neighborhoods were underwater for weeks. Bodies floated in the streets. The world watched in horror as one of America's greatest cities drowned, and the government's response was slow, chaotic, and widely condemned. Over 400,000 people were displaced. Many never came back. It was the end of New Orleans as everyone knew it. But it was not the end of New Orleans. What happened next shocked everyone. The people of New Orleans came back. They gutted their homes with their bare hands. They replanted. They rebuilt. The music came back first. Then the food. Then the festivals. The tourists returned. New restaurants opened. New artists moved in. New Orleans today is not the same city it was before Katrina. But it is alive. Loudly, stubbornly, defiantly alive. It is still one of the most unique cities on Earth. A place where French, Spanish, African, Native American, and American cultures collide in the food, the architecture, the music, and the spirit of its people. New Orleans was built on a swamp by people who refused to listen to reason. It survived hurricanes, plagues, wars, and neglect. It gave the world jazz. It gave America its greatest party. It showed the world what happens when cultures collide and create something entirely new. There is no other city like it on Earth. And if you ever stand on Bourbon Street at night, with the music pouring out of every door and the smell of the Mississippi in the air, you will feel it. This city does not just have history. This city is history.